Welcome to Deconstructing DJG. In each episode, we will unravel the threads of bad theology, uncover the biases that obscure truth, and explore the psychological and social factors that contribute to the spread of toxic epistemology. Toxic epistemology is, of course, those doctrines, teachings, and dogma that are harmful to us, the things that tell us that we have no worth, that we have no purpose, that we are not good people. And so, on that note, we are going to be reading through James Dobson's The Strong-Willed Child. A lot of us have very personal experience with this book, although I will admit this is my first time reading it myself, cover to cover, and it is horrifying.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Because I'm a masochist. What can I say?
Content.
My mom was given this book, and there's a father who keeps his promises, strong-willed child, and
Dare to discipline.
It just sounds really good. We are suffering right now just hearing those words.
Right?
Those titles. Do I even have to read the books just from the titles?
Technically,
it is helpful.
You can't
actually.
You can't judge a book by its cover, so technically you have to. But
the cover makes it look way better than it actually is. At the beginning, he talks about how you don't have to get angry at your children, but you need action. Right? And that makes sense.
So far, so good.
Correct. And he says that the closer that the action moves to the front of the conflict, the less punishment is required. And I think what he is trying to say is that you want to have a bad thing that happens immediately followed with, hey, that's not what we're supposed to do, or redirecting, or whatever. And so if you catch it right away, you're going to have to do less than if you let it go and you come back to it next week, I guess.
It makes sense, but has really bad implications.
Is at least a C+.
No. It's a at first blush, it's a D-, but it goes to F- if you look at it closer.
Right. On a surface reading, with all of the benefit of the doubt that you should give to someone with a charitable reading, that you would think, oh, this is someone who's a doctor who's writing a book on how to read children. Yeah. This is at least a C+ to a low B.
I guess you're thinking, I spent $20 on this, I might as well give it a shot.
Right. The problem word for me is he doesn't say misbehavior. He says conflict. So it's not that the child does something wrong. It's that the child is basically being an aggressor towards him by misbehaving. And so it is a conflict between him and his child rather than the child making a wrong action, choice, whatever.
Well, the other problem I see is control and conflict in right next to each other. Well, yeah. Because yes, children need to be controlled to a certain degree in certain circumstances, like when a child is having a meltdown in the cereal aisle. Yeah,
because he wants the Cheerios. He wants the honeycombs.
Right,
and they're unhealthy.
So you can't have it. That is something where the child does need to be controlled in a certain sense. And children do need rules to live by.
Not rules.
And
I'll agree with that, yeah.
Right.
But the problem with this, though, is he's saying it's like, this just implies, if you catch it later, beat him harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then...
So if you're lazy, you just beat your kid more and you're fine.
But if there's conflict, there should be punishment. And you should punish even without anger. They should be content within the boundary when you punish them for the simple fact of conflict.
In this case, he's technically saying action, so he's not actually using the word punishment yet. So I would say, right now, assuming you went in with your, I spent $20, I'm going to give this a shot mentality, this is actually kind of okay. But just because he doesn't actually specify spank the kid.
Yeah. So something that I have learned over and over and over again is that it is an absolute recipe for disaster to assume that people are going to understand you or assume that someone will know when they're bothering you or what you find uncouth or whatever. You have to communicate directly about those things because we all come from different places and different families and different lifestyles. And so different social mores are going to exist in, a mixed set of people. And so you just can't, assume these sorts of things. But that is exactly what James Dobson says children should do. So children who have the least amount of social knowledge are supposed to know precisely where their parents typically draw the line. Adults often reveal our particular points of action to them in at least a dozen subtle ways. Only at those moments do we use their middle names.
This is unhinged.
Yeah, like, no, subtle is not precise, sir. Those are antonyms. Thank you very much.
Okay, may I make a small point?
Yes.
Is it a subtle point?
No, this is a thing where in certain cultural contexts, subtle is the way it is done. Make eyes, or you say things so the child knows that they did something wrong, and they'll have to deal with it shortly, but they're not going to be publicly admonished now. Things will be dealt with at home privately.
It sounds worse, honestly. Because you're basically saying, hey, kid, you don't know what you did, but you did something. So think about that real hard.
And that's still precisely the whole, like, you've explained to your child ahead of time, if I give you this look, that means this. And so if you give the kid that look while you're at the store or the restaurant or whatever, fine. But that's because you've already established what the fuck that means. In this case, you're just supposed to do a dozen subtle things and never actually outline it for the child to explain this is what this means.
That's a problem. But like the way it's done in where I am, if things get to the point where there's a public admonishment, things have gone way out of hand. Usually there's a look. There's might be one child sits up and puts themselves together. And because they know that when they get home, there's going to be a talking to. But they don't know what the topic is yet. But
yeah,
in my experience, the not knowing is the worst part.
It is. It absolutely is.
So really,
you question everything.
Yeah, giving them the look and saying, hey, I'm not going to tell you what you did. But it's the anticipation that's the worst part.
So here's the subtle cues that James Dobson is talking about. Using their middle name, William Thornton Langford, get in the tub. Our speech also becomes more staccato and abrupt. Young man, I told you. Our faces turn red. An important clue. We jump from our chairs. And he said, don't use anger, just action. How the fuck is none of that anger?
This is not subtle. This is not
subtle. Middle name, not anger. But everything else, absolutely.
This is not subtle.
The result ends in like physical punishment. I feel like it's kind of messy. If it's just a talking to, yeah, sure. That makes sense to me. If you expect like a really big punishment at the end, because then you're just like, what did I do? Kind of deal. Yeah. Whereas it's just like, I'm gonna get talked to, and then that, or like you maybe grounded or something. But like if it's like, if you have to anticipate a punishment, that's the worst.
I mean, usually what I'm talking about is like a super, I'm disappointed in you, or you embarrassed me in front of people, and you're gonna get a timeout.
Yeah, see, that's not the punishment that Cam and I had to look forward to. Yeah, because you have to keep in mind that since we're talking about James Dobson, we are talking about James Dobson punishments.
Yeah, like,
and this is not timeout. This is not a talking to. This will be corporal punishment. That is what James Dobson intends.
You're getting your ass pull up.
I cannot wrap my head around corporal punishment.
Yeah, get ready, because that's what this whole thing is about. So.
Corporal punishment is psychotic, and
it is.
Anyone who does it needs to be jailed. That's just my position. Come at me, bro.
Here is what James Dobson has to say positively about the strong-willed child. He said, "It is my firm conviction that the strong-willed child usually possesses more creative potential and strength of character than his compliant siblings, provided his parents can help him channel his impulses and gain control of his rampaging will. My writings are dedicated to this purpose."
That's a whack thing to say.
No, what he's trying to do is he's trying to break their will.
That is correct.
I'm pretty sure it's actually like one of the things they actually try and do. No, that's the pearls. Never mind. Sorry.
No, it's in this, and it's also in Gothard. So they
the
all agree.
They literally explicitly say, "Break the kid's will, and you're good."
This book also explicitly says, "Break the child's will."
Oh shit! Really? I thought a little bit more like. Was like dog whistled as opposed to like straight up whistled?
I thought it was too, and then I started reading his book, and it's not. But I'm trying to remember if it was the men's manual or the basic seminar, but one of those two, Gothard, explicitly talks about breaking the will of the child. So
this is slightly on topic, but like if you want to see something really wild, go look up the Amazon reviews for Pearl's book. It's just tragic.
Yes. So this next section, I need to give everyone a big trigger warning. If you have any sensitivities to violence towards animals, I will put up a timestamp so you can skip to the end of this. It is quite disturbing, so proceed forward with caution. So he wants to talk about how you should kind of contextualize these conflicts with your child, your strong-willed child. And so as an object lesson, he decides to use a fight that he had with his dog. I had seen this defiant mood before and knew there was only one way to deal with it.
Wow.
The only way to make Siggy obey is to threaten him with destruction. Nothing else works. I turned and went to my closet and got a small belt to help me, quote unquote, reason with Mr. Freud. The dog's name is Sigmund Freud. My wife, who was watching, don't ask me. When I returned, I held up the belt and again told my angry dog to go get into his bed. He stood his ground, so I gave him a firm swat across the rear end, and he tried to bite the belt. I hit him again, and he tried to bite me. Shocker. Like, who on earth could have guessed if you strike a dog multiple times, they're going to try and bite you? Like, oh my God.
The dude's a genius.
Right? And then what developed next is impossible to describe, and yet he's going to go ahead and describe it.
He's really good at that.
That tiny dog and I had the most vicious fight ever staged between man and beast. I fought him up one wall and down the other, with both of us scratching and clawing and growling and swinging the belts. I am embarrassed by the memory of the entire scene. I don't think you are, considering you put it in this book that you wrote in, 1983, 84? And you continue to...
standard dog training of the time? Was it beat the dog till it listens?
Some people did. I want to say that's about the time there was that whole idea started where dogs are pack animals, and so you have to be the alpha.
But like, is there between beating the dog and like establishing dominance?
Correct. There are absolutely dog trainers that have been around for decades that are big about dominance, not aggression, and being able to teach the owners the difference.
Like, I don't know, food usually works pretty good for some dogs.
It does. Food works great. So from that time to this, Siggy has never made another go for broke stand. It is clear to me now that Siggy was saying in his canine way, I don't think you're tough enough to make me obey.
Oh my gosh. I'm not a dog person. I'm not even a pet person who... I'm someone who was bitten by a dog when I was little and have never really liked dogs. Oh my gosh, that was... What the hell was that? What the hell was that?
Correct. And then he goes on to say, perhaps I seem to be humanizing the behavior of a dog, but I think not. Veterinarians will confirm that some breeds of dogs, notably Dachshunds and Shepherds, will not accept the leadership of their masters until human authority has stood the test of fire and proved itself worthy. Just as surely as a dog will occasionally challenge the authority of his leaders, a little child is inclined to do the same thing, only more so. This is no minor observation, for it represents a characteristic of human nature which is rarely recognized or admitted by the experts who write books on the subject of discipline. I have yet to find a text for parents or teachers which acknowledges the struggle, the exhausting confrontation of wills, which most parents and teachers experience regularly with their children.
That's fucked up.
Adult leadership is rarely accepted unchallenged by the next generation. It must be tested and found worthy of allegiance. Like, yes, we do question things.
Like, you don't beat the kid.
That's not
that is
this
not
aggressive, like, conflict confrontation.
Speaking as an incredibly manly man, having someone like beat me does not make me want to follow them.
No, not at all. There is such a humongous difference between fear and respect.
Well, the thing is, fear will get you temporary control.
Yes,
I will point out.
Will.
So 1950s is when the alpha, like the first like idea, and then 1970s is when it got really popularized and actually called like alpha wolf.
Okay.
So was this written before then?
This was written in 1983 or 84.
So it was after. So he was entirely possible going off this then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This respect for strength and courage also makes children want to know how tough their leaders are. You know, I thought a great many things as a child, and I don't ever remember thinking, I need to know how tough my parents are.
Well, it's because you're not masculine enough, right? So it's probably these are children who are. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well,
I was trying. I couldn't find anything.
That's ironic to say to the person who has stopped subscribing to the woman's subscription. I will say that's one thing. He does have a point where there's this difference between like if someone is a complete pushover, children will not respect them, and then they will not listen to them. I'll agree with that. Correct. Now, I don't think the children will be convinced they will be convinced temporarily by beating the child, but then you end up with just like, essentially it's like trying to like compress water. You just end up with a leak somewhere else and then getting your hand cut off because of the pressure. Exactly.
All right. I will say this. He is actually being extraordinarily biblical.
He is.
That's probably where he gets most of his stuff from. That and this discredited wolf study.
So like when I was talking about Mary and Joseph, what he is talking about is a modernization of what the training Joseph would have used on Jesus.
Well, isn't God all about like children are I want
No.
Jesus was all about like bring the young to me kind of deal. And I want to say like
hold on.
Or is that just my evangelical part?
No, that meant the children were the intelligence agents of the women. What he is saying is, hey, I have nothing to hide. Send all your CIA kids to me to keep an eye on me. Don't worry.
Interesting.
This is
kids listen
and report back to mama.
They say the darndest things.
And so he's like, hey, send all your kids to me. I have nothing to hide. That's what let all the children come unto me means.
Because this
is why I mean I can be super literal.
Because I'm to say, I can guarantee that sooner or later, one of the children under your authority will clench his little fist and challenge your leadership. Like Siggy at bedtime, he will convey this message by his disobedient manner. I don't think you are tough enough to make me do what you say.
I kind of get what he's saying, but I see what he sees, and I'm not entirely certain how he gets what he sees from what he sees.
I really want that child to pull out his belt and whip him until until the child dominates
Mr. Dobson.
Yes. Who's on board?
I mean, there are some 10-year-olds who would absolutely just clean him out.
Oh yeah.
They would. They could beat almost anybody. Like they're. I don't know if they're feed them, but like they're massive.
Oh, so did I even get too upset over that?
Isn't the solution. At the same time, it would be very. Is it Schadenfreude? Is that how you say the word?
No. Violence is not the answer. Violence is the question, and it is.
Answer is yes.
Yes.
Of course. Always.
Where does this defiant spirit come from? Why are children at such conflict with their parents?
Because we're getting
Any
beat all the time.
guesses?
Honestly, because we're getting beat all the time is my only real guess.
According to James Dobson, it's original sin. Perhaps
Wonderful.
this tendency towards self-will is the essence of original sin, which has infiltrated the human family. It certainly explains why I place such stress on the proper response to willful defiance during childhood, for that rebellion can plant seeds of personal disaster. The thorny weed which it produces may grow into a tangled briar patch during the troubled days of adolescence.
Is he saying that the only time the original sin's a problem is in childhood?
No, original sin's a problem throughout your whole life.
Why are we only beating children?
Because you get arrested if you beat adults.
That's a good point.
Yep.
His underlying assumption here, this is bad theology right here. His idea here is that you can beat original sin out of children, which is under, I'm pretty sure, all theologies.
I doubt that's what he's saying. I think he's saying you can beat it to where it no longer shows itself. You basically beat all the symptoms down, and then you ignore it.
No, he's saying if there's a thorny weed that can grow, blah, 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 and you have to...
I think you're taking him too literally. I think you should think it's more of a metaphor.
You have to beat down this thorny weed and uproot it, and if you can destroy this tendency towards self-will, you can uproot original sin in your child. Which
I guarantee if you asked him, he would say that's not it.
Actually, James Dobson does originally come from the Church of the Nazarene. They do have a purity or holiness doctrine to where it is possible to be sin-free once you are truly saved.
I'm good. I am so good at figuring out someone's theology. You have to beat the sin out of the child, and
that is the most Catholic, non-Catholic thing I've ever heard.
And this only works because the child is not a real person.
I can't help but think of those guys with the boards who are smacking themselves and just like chanting the Gregorian things, just like whap, walk around. Walk around.
This only works because the child is not a real person. The child is a dog. It's the same status as a dog.
Exactly.
I mean, a little higher, but like, I get what you're saying.
This is.
If the child beats the dog, it's okay. But if the dog beats the child, that's not okay.
Maybe. I am so angry at this right now.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if Dobson saw a dog fighting a child, he'd be like, save the child, and then ignore the dog. I feel like he would at least go to that level of like hierarchy.
I'm not convinced of this.
I think it would depend on if it was his child or not, and if it was a compliant child or not. Because if it was a strong-willed child, perhaps that was punishment from the dog that he needed. Exactly.
I see.
And also, if it's a dog that speaks because of the will of God.
Caleb could be here, alive and well.
Sorry, you had to go there. You have to make the jokes because this is so unhinged.
It is. It's bad. This is what happens if the parent is a permissive parent. When a parent refuses to accept his child's defiant challenge, something changes in their relationship. The youngster begins to look at his mother and his father with disrespect. They are unworthy of his allegiance. Ooh. More important, he wonders why would they let him do such harmful things if they really loved him.
Hey, hold on. How old is this child?
I don't know. 8?
This applies to an 8-year-old.
Let's talk about allegiance. Finish reading this, and I'm going to talk about allegiance.
Yes. So the ultimate paradox of childhood is that boys and girls want to be led by their parents, but insist that their mothers and fathers earn the right to lead them.
I'm going to talk about allegiance.
What the fuck?
If we're going to talk about allegiance we all said the Pledge of Allegiance, but that's based on an idea that is older than that, and it's we have to go back to the Middle Ages and the loyalty pledges, all right, in the feudal system for that context. And you would have a noble pledge to one level of noble to a higher level, and then them to the king, all right? And we turned it into the flag so that we wanted to make it some other thing. But what you have here is the idea he's trying to present is that parents are the lords of and the children are the vassals. This is a vassalage, and that the children are vassals who are in rebellion. As a result, the parents have the right to crush the rebellious vassals and bring them into heel in his
submission. Yeah. Sounds very biblical.
This happens several times in scripture. This happens all over the place in history. That is the story that is being told in this passage.
I guess it starts with the assumption that the child is already the vassal, more or less, and just kind of assuming that the child has no agency, which is just like, bro. But at the same time, it's kind of weird. So that you're giving the child no agency, and you're giving also the child all the agency.
Yes.
No, childs have a little bit of choice, but at the same time, they're not trying to demand that you earn the right to lead them. They're just like, what the fuck am I doing?
Exactly.
They have no idea what's going on. This is not the thought. It's just like what is going on is it's probably about as advanced as you're going to get from an 8-year-old at least.
Exactly.
Now, 16-year-old, sure. But like, you still can't be a 16-year-old because usually they can whoop your ass.
And still, this idea of blind allegiance because you're scared of your parents is not the same thing as having a healthy, respectful relationship.
That's not blind allegiance. That's like, I'm going to hide everything I can from them and not tell them shit, and then they'll wonder why you left at 18.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That first they're a dog, then who needs to be whipped into submission. Now they're a vassal who owes absolute allegiance.
How much of this is actually like directly? I'm curious how much Dobson was like, I am directly inspired by this, and how much is just kind of, what do you call it, subconsciously inspired?
Oh.
Be interesting. Like, is this him like being like, this is exactly what I believe, and for reasons, or is he just kind of like, this is how it's been done, so I shall continue to do so?
No, I think he thought he had a novel way to handle children, something that had not been done before. He finally had cracked the code, and so this was new information to help parents.
Did he test it on his kid?
I'm sure he did.
Does he have kids?
He sure does.
Do his kids
he has
still
grandkids.
live with him?
They don't live with him.
Or does the kids still like deal with him?
As far as I know, at least some of his children are still in contact because he talks about spending time with grandkids. I do not know if that is all his children. Who knows?
This is so upsetting to me.
He's got an entire family institute. My God.
I have been there multiple times. It has an oppressive feel to the whole campus.
I was looking at the website. I'm like, this website is just
huge
like
freaking place on the north side of town, and there's signs from the highway leading to it. They pay off-duty police officers to be their private security, so there are always cops on ground, so nobody tries anything. However, after the Club Q shooting this last November, we're almost exactly a year from that mass shooting. Anyways, in the wake of that, some people angry at how Focus on the Family has contributed greatly to the negative discourse against LGBTQ people. So they spray painted, "You have blood on your hands" on the Focus on the Family sign on their main campus.
Love that for them.
I am currently on their website looking at something called Keep Your Love On, which, believe it or not, is about for daughters and fathers, not for regular relationships. I don't know what to think, honestly. I don't want to think about it, but he says Jesus is really key, so I think we should just leave it at that.
I know exactly what
that's not Christian rhetoric. It is the truth, believe it or not, according to Dr. James Dobson, which we all know he's like a really reputable source here. I'm being completely sarcastic in case anyone.
That's a whole lot of other Focus on the Family stuff that we'll get into. I just figured this would be a nice intro.
Gentle readers. This is our
doesn't feel gentle.
Gentle
it
readers.
Feels like deep end.
Yes, gentle listeners. This is how we are going to introduce you to Dr. James Dobson. He is our family-friendly focus.
The way these people smile disturbs me.
It is. It's so weird.
I'm looking at their stuff. It's just like, guys, get a better photographer. He's not doing you guys any favors.
No favors. None whatsoever. But I have a feeling these people just constantly smile like the people from Get Out.
That's exactly what it looks like. What? Anyway, back to a very important topic of flushing a baby down the toilet.
So the headlines reveal the primrose path down which the authors were leading us. Never once did they admit that a child is capable of spitting in his parent's face, or running down the middle of a busy street, or sawing a leg off the dining room table, or trying to flush baby brother down the toilet. I'm sorry, but what?
I'm fully willing to admit that all of those are true.
I could see that happen. I could see the baby brother being in on it and being like, I want to do this.
Well, I can see that. Sawing a leg off the dining room table? Which child has like
absolutely. I would do that. We were the kind of kids that would happen. Like, kids say and do the darndest things.
My brother literally ran down the street and was brought home by a neighbor who grabbed him about to walk into the not the interstate, but the highway.
The littlest brother, he actually almost climbed on the back of a bus and just.
Now, with those children in mind, were they doing it to create conflict with their parents?
No.
Or were they doing it because they were dumb shit little kids who didn't know better?
Little kid. Well, not dumb. Little kids who didn't know better. They were 8.
My brother did it for the very simple reason that he wanted to go for a walk, and mom was on the phone, and dad was at work, and sister was at a track meet.
See, he was just trying to be independent, you know?
And he was 3 years old, and he was 2.5, 3 years old, and he wanted to go for a walk.
Oh my god. See, this is why they have all of those baby-proof door things to make it like
he got past the baby-proof door.
No.
Do you know what's easier though? Wow. Beat him. Do it again.
So he goes on to describe the plight of parents. There was no acknowledgement that some mothers and fathers go to bed at night with a pounding, throbbing headache, wondering how parenthood became such an exhausting and nerve-wracking thing.
Can I say something real fast? This is always been this kind of ironic, where there's like, parenting is so difficult, and these guys proceed to like homeschool their kids.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're literally making it hard on yourself. You could go ahead and put them in daycare, or send them to school or something and get yourself like 6 hours, 8 hours, however long.
Exactly.
Or send them off to what's it called?
Military school.
Or what's it called? The boarding school.
Dude.
Yep.
I feel like boarding schools is almost the ones I've seen in movies and stuff feel almost as, assuming they're Catholic, are almost as abusive as homeschooling.
Yes, but at least the parents don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
I mean, true, but there's other options too.
Right.
You know, there's a ditch outside.
If you hate being a parent and you don't like your kids, there are options.
Yeah.
There are ditches everywhere. Put the baby in the ditch and leave. Put it in that what's the basket and the wind rocket.
The bulrushes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. It's clearly a biblical thing, so they should be doing it.
Yeah, it's approved by scripture.
Do not take that advice seriously.
No, do not. We are being facetious.
This is comedy. You know what? You can't say anything more. Comedy's dead. To a comedy show recently, and one of the ladies was like complaining about that, and just like, it was the most annoying thing possible. And I was just like, come on. If you're complaining about comedy being dead, I feel like it's on you.
It really is. It is. We can always find something funny.
If you can't find something funny, if you have to complain about being canceled, it's because you're not funny.
Yeah, exactly. So this little snippet I posted up on Instagram because it is quite possibly the funniest thing that he has said so far in this book. Just as surely as some children are naturally compliant, there are others who seem to be defiant upon exit from the womb. They come into the world smoking a cigar and yelling about the temperature in the delivery room and the incompetence of the nursing staff and the way things are run by the administrator of the hospital.
This feels like a self-report.
It really does.
It sounds like freaking Boss Baby.
Oh, I know what, like this is something he did.
Oh my gosh, I know what this. All right, this is a rephrase of Aristotle's idea of some people are natural masters and some people are natural slaves. And it's for him, it's not about race. It's simply a matter of one child is naturally a master, this other child is naturally a slave. It's just
this personality thing as opposed to like anything else.
Right. So it could be two children from the same mother. One is just naturally a master. One is just naturally a slave, and you can't do anything about it. One will go through their life with the slave essence in their soul. The other has a master essence in their soul, and will.
So in this case, James Dobson is saying that
break the willful. The willful child is the master, has the master essence, and you need.
And you got to break them.
Correct.
Okay.
You are a parent, and you need to have the role of a master, even if you have a slave spirit, and you need to break your master child.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Just a bit weird.
Okay. So here's the outrageous things that newborns do to be strong-willed. They expect meals to be served the instant they are ordered, and they demand every moment of mother's time.
Today I learned I'm a strong-willed child.
What I want to say is,
if you say it, we can bleep it out. It's fine.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna give a bleep. That's it. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Okay, gotcha.
We have a couple of figures. Yay!
Ooh,
Dobson is better at graphs than Bill Gothard is. So he shows a bell curve to basically say that, you know, you've got your compliant and your defiant children, which are kind of the minority on either end of the spectrum, and then most children are going to be somewhere in the middle.
I want to assume no studies have been done on this.
There have been studies done on this, but he's not referencing them. He's just going off of what his anecdotal experience is.
How many kids? 2. He has 2 kids. This man is got a lot of statistics right there.
You know, usually one would think that this bell curve is the way that it's distributed amongst children, which generally speaking, statisticians would agree. However, he says, having talked to at least 25,000 harried parents, I'm convinced that my supposition was wrong. The true distribution is probably depicted in figure 2 below, where compliant is almost nil, and then defiant is all the way up at the top, and like there's even a bit of a plateau. So like,
hold on, time the fuck out. This makes absolutely no sense. This graph is stupid. You don't have you don't have number of cases like this is.
I know.
I just not noticed that.
Like I said, it's better than Gothard.
He's basically
saying great,
the more kids you have,
simply by the word harried, he's already given away that
the bias.
He's implying the more kids you have in a group, the more defiant they get. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Well, he's also given the way that the pool of his sources is fundamentally flawed.
I'm just saying his graph is stupid and means absolutely nothing, and like he shouldn't be using this. And like,
here's another problem: compliant and defiant are not opposites. They are fundamentally, at some points, in some ways, in some situations, a child will be compliant. In other situations, a child would be defiant. And it's at most, at best, it's going to be, it's like a child will be compliant X% of the time because of, also, a child is not the only element. It's also the adults. The adult is a factor in the compliance, defiance proportion in the child's
there are several other observations about the strong-willed child which may be helpful to parents. First, it is reassuring to verbalize the guilt and anxiety which conscientious mothers and fathers commonly feel. They are engaged in an all-out tug-of-war which leaves them frustrated and fatigued. No one told them that parenthood would be this difficult, and they blame themselves for the tension that arises.
Can I advocate for more education? I think that would solve a lot of these issues here.
Exactly. Like, if you got into parenthood not thinking it was going to be difficult, not thinking your child was going to at some point disagree with you, like, you are in la la land. They call you Delulu these days on TikTok.
I'm of the opinion that before you get married, you should take a class on what marriage is like. And before you have kids.
Well, home ec, where they give you like a literal like electronic baby and like take care of the baby, and if it dies, you like lose.
When you're pregnant, or preferably before you're pregnant, you should take a class on how to parent and child development, and all of this should be like freely available at the community college.
Well, I feel like a lot of this is like, I would say you learn some of it through just like meeting a shit ton of people.
Yeah, but
average
homeschooler can't.
Homeschooler does not do that, and I imagine Dobson here is talking to those people.
Correct.
And he's doing wrong thing. My blood pressure is going up with this, so
breathe.
Hold for, is it 5 seconds?
4 seconds.
4 seconds. 4 seconds. Breathe out. And just do that until, I guess, something.
Box breathing. I can send you a link.
I know how to do it. It's just.
I watched, who's the guy who plays Thor? I watched Thor learn how to do that. It was very weird.
Interesting. What is his name? Hemsworth. Hemsworth.
I watched Chris Hemsworth learn how to do that. Apparently he's got some sort of like heart condition.
Better.
Okay, cool.
They had planned to be such loving and effective parents, reading fairy stories to their pajama-clad angels by the fireplace. The difference between life as it is and life as it ought to be is a frightening and distressing bit of reality. Like, hello. I mean,
looking at his website, he very much plays a large part in creating that chasm,
romanticized
reality
version. Yeah.
Well, he says like, you too could have this romanticized version, and gives us like advice that like at best is ineffective.
Exactly.
Like, that is what he is describing is a real thing that happens. I've seen that happen.
It's like postpartum depression is also a thing, and no one really talks about that. It just like goes back to education and like just more sex ed and like basically just like general life economics in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which your homeschooler ain't gonna get. So
no, they are not. But this concept of, if you beat the crap out of your children to make them godly children, etc., you're going to have this picture perfect thing. In practice, in my family, I was the strong-willed child. One of my first words was by self. I wanted to do everything by myself. And I was incredibly independent. And I was incredibly curious and extroverted and everything. I wanted to experience it all. And I didn't want to have my hand held the whole time. I wanted to dive in and experience it by self. And so obviously this is a problem when you are a missionary family that is traveling around from church to church to church to church, asking for money. We're traveling around, and so I have to be on my best behavior. And then my little brother is born, and then I have to make sure that once it got to where mom started doing stuff up front with dad again, I had to keep my baby brother quiet while we were sitting there. I had to be behaved, and I had to take care of, younger sibling. And then another sibling is born, and me and my middle sibling have to, help her, keep her in control while we're on these deputation trips. Yes, we did have a very nice facade that was put up when we were at these churches asking for money. And it did not mean that we had a harmonious home. It did not mean that there was not conflict. I lost count of the number of times that my brother got his mouth washed out with soap. Or we got spanked, or we were not allowed to go do things. We were grounded, and more often it was corporal punishment. Grounding was a lesser thing, or it was like a compound punishment where first you get beat, and then you are also grounded. It does create a lovely facade, but the problem is that is all that it ever is and ever will be. It is a facade. If you do not show your children respect, they are not going to respect you back. They might fear you, but they're not going to respect you.
If you make the facade good enough, then you can believe it yourself.
Well, I'm sure the parents can believe it, but the children are sitting there going, okay, I have 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days until I am out of the house. Awesome!
Yeah, that definitely is like a, what do you call it? They're definitely pushed that direction.
Yeah, correct.
Here's how that looked to me, for me. My mom was publicly very respectable, all right, in the church. And my dad was a CCD teacher and was a chaperone. And at home, I was always the strong-willed, yelling at them, could not stand them. But at church, I was an altar server. I was the holding it together. But I was so close to crying during all the time because I wanted to talk to someone and ask someone if they knew a way to asking for help. But I could not do that because that would embarrass them. And I did not want to do that because I didn't want to, if I embarrass them, that would be worse than yelling at them at home or worse than anything I could do. Like, even if I thought I was being super obvious and barely holding back tears, I would also, if someone made an overture to approach me, I would put laughter on this happy face, go super chipper, and as if nothing could possibly be wrong, to prevent them to even suspect that there was something that could potentially be anything. And I just resented by even doing that, and it's exhausting.
I think here he doesn't seem to understand the words that are coming out of his mouth. He says that treat your child with sincere love and dignity, but require him to follow your leadership. Choose carefully the matters which are worthy of confrontation, then accept his challenge on those issues and win decisively. Reward every positive, cooperative gesture he makes by offering your attention, affection, and verbal praise. Then take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning.
Those are grammatically correct sentences.
Isn't that refreshing?
I don't get it.
That is some horse shit. But those are
grammatically. What's the aspirin, though?
That's a joke. That's
a joke.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
They used to say, the doctor, blah, blah, blah. He said, take 2 and call me in the morning.
Dignity would say, hey, sometimes you have to acknowledge that your child is right. Sometimes you have to
child can never be right, though. The fact is, you got to win decisively on whatever.
Yeah.
You're not picking and choosing battles.
It's not a win. It's not winning. No, misunderstanding the relationship between 2 human people. This is not someone that you're competing against at the Olympics.
As I said,
this is a question.
This is a lord and his vassal.
Yeah.
This is a question I've had, though, because obviously I don't know how much of this is just the remnants of the evangelical, but I feel like there is some level of discipline needed. But at the same time, it's I don't really know what that would look like. Obviously, he's going way too far on the excessive, but
there are absolutely ways to discipline that are not corporal punishment or based on fear.
Define corporal punishment real quick.
Corporal punishment is any sort of physical attack on a child.
So physical pain is basically corporal punishment.
Yeah.
So grounding is not considered corporal punishment.
That is correct.
Okay, gotcha.
It is explicitly the beating children that is
right. One of the things that my mom did was with my brother was She had him copy out the 10 Commandments 100 times, and if he made an error, he had to start again.
When the kid refuses to do any of that, what do you do then?
That's where the troubled teen industry comes into play.
Oh.
So you send them off to a Christian boot camp and hope they survive.
If you didn't want to traumatize your child, what would you do?
You have to start this type of thing, the stuff, very early to get them into the habit of going along with what you do, with the rules before, so that when they are hit hormones, they have the habit of listening to you and at least have some respect for what you have to say.
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably also more effective than beating the child when they're hormonal.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure that there's so much hormones, like beating the kid ain't gonna change too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I guess if you start early beating the child, it would probably do something.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. That's the theory of the pearls. And let's be fair, it does work. It's evil.
It's temporary.
Well, it's cheap, I guess is the way to put it.
Yes.
It's not that it causes obedience and changes in a deep way. It activates the fear response and it short circuits before they have the ability to have understanding. And so the only thing that's holding them holding the obedience is repeated short-term fear that becomes long-term trauma bonding. Yeah, that is the entire theory, and it
is fucked up. But you're right.
It works. It's evil, but
it's quick and cheap, I guess we would put it, or I guess dirty and cheap. We would put it.
It short circuits reason and prevents people from being able to use reason because the only thing they have access to is fear.
Yeah, especially you're setting the kid up for failure in a sense, or
and that's the goal.
That's a good point, actually. We got to keep him in the group.
Yep.
Can we make a joke about something that's very funny, please?
Yeah, go for it.
No, someone else do it.
Something that is lesser known about James Dobson. He was a research assistant for Paul Popenoe. He was a eugenicist who he actually advocated for forced sterilization of certain undesirable people. He received an honorary SCD, I forget some sort of doctorate from Occidental College. And so then from there on out, he referred to himself as Dr. Popenoe, even though it was only an honorary degree, but they ended up actually rescinding that degree posthumously in 2019 after a unanimous vote of its board of trustees. He was very interested in using the principles of German and Austrian marriage consultation services for eugenics purposes. And this was right around the 1930s, 1940s, so...
Amazing.
Yeah.
So we know what we're talking about here.
Correct. Yes. And so basically, James Dobson, who to this day quotes Popenoe on the Focus on the Family website, that person that he's quoting was quite literally a Yahtzee eugenicist. And treating others like humans that is really shining through in this book of James Dobson. Yes.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia, James Dobson. And he interviewed Ted Bundy.
Yes, he did.
And it's like...
Before or after his...
After.
After all, the day before his execution.
Yep.
But looking at this...
Because he found Jesus while he was in prison. And so James Dobson interviewed him to be like, see, God can save anybody. And people were like, he literally ate people. Why?
But no, they were in the interview. Apparently, Dobson took out of this that violent pornography is the reason for all of the problems.
That is correct.
Bundy said that, and then Dobson's like, absolutely, this serial killer is telling the truth.
Yep.
And went with that.
Yep.
Purity balls, the thing. I'm looking at...
He gave his daughter... Oh, God, this is great. James Dobson gave his 10-year-old daughter a golden key necklace as a chastity promise.
Didn't he give her a lock?
That's the key.
No,
he should give her a lock.
He should give her a lock and give
and
her.
And he has the key.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he gives her.
Totally
and he gives her husband the key. That's the correct.
Robin Hood Men in Tights, right?
I've not actually watched it. I want to.
The song at the beginning where she's singing about where is the man who holds the key, and yeah, she gets out of the bath and she's wearing a giant like chastity belt, and then at the very end of the movie, Robin of Locksley with his key is like, here we go, I'm gonna open the lock, and it got stuck.
Amazing, because it's
Call
too big.
the locksmith.
Because his key is too big.
Oh no, the key was a perfect fit. It just wouldn't turn.
Oh,
they weren't the right fit. Clearly.
Did he have the other slipper?
When we're talking about Bundy there and how the porn was what
the devil is the father of lies, and that you can.
I know.
That if someone can fake a conversion and in order to spread lies,
they will. He says that the strong-willed child is more inclined towards sexual promiscuity and drug abuse and academic difficulties. No. This is not an inevitable prediction, of course, because the complexities of the human personality make it impossible to forecast behavior with complete accuracy. That's like one of the only. Okay, I think you've got a nuanced point there.
I'm reading more about this guy and I'm more and more disgusted. I think the funniest thing is him leaving what was it?
A message is not delivered until it is understood. Do the parents deliver the message of their expectations?
No, the child is supposed to suss that out from the subtle cues of them yelling at him.
And if someone is being yelled at, they shut off their communication ability as a protection measure.
Correct.
This is not willful disobedience. This is a child who is being miseducated and is doing his best to do what he can to survive a bad parent.
Yep.
Agreed.
And a parent who is being taught to be a bad parent by a bad actor, Mr. Dobson.
I feel like that's like a feature of religion, not necessarily a bug. But so apparently he used to be Dobson, that is, used to be an American Psychological Association. So he was on there. Mm-hmm. Part of the organization. But then that association decided homosexuality isn't a mental disorder, and so they removed it from their list of that. And so then Dobson resigned in protest.
Yep. Exactly.
Because he's like, it's a mental disorder.
Yep.
So yeah, great guy. Really great guy.
Of course. So he says that willful defiance is a deliberate act of disobedience. It occurs only when the child knows what his parents expect and then chooses to do the opposite in a haughty manner. In short, it is a refusal to accept parental leadership, such as running away when called, screaming insults, acts of outright disobedience, etc. By contrast, childish irresponsibility results from forgetting, accidents, mistakes, a short attention span, low frustration tolerance, immaturity, etc. The problem is...
These are very similar, in my opinion.
When we were told, do not do XYZ. It wasn't really that we understood exactly what was being expected of us. We just knew to don't do exactly XYZ. Now, if there were things that were similar to XYZ, but they weren't strictly identified and defined as XYZ, we didn't necessarily know it, but we would still get in trouble because we had been told, don't do XYZ.
Yeah. Don't use the frying pans on high. I'll put it on 7, not high.
That makes sense to me.
Because it needs to be hot enough to cook an egg. No, only put the frying pan on maximum of 4 and let it come to temperature slow. It takes fucking forever to do it on low, and it still takes 10 minutes to get it on 4. I want my egg quick.
Logically, that makes sense.
That's an example. That's where
that is the child being deliberately, willfully ignorant. Clearly.
Yeah, that's
because he's using logic and the things he was told and coming to a logical conclusion obviously that's the wrong way to do it. I'm being sarcastic. That is the one thing growing up where it's like they do something, and you're just like, well, why does this matter? And they're like, well, because. And then you're just like, but like why? And then it's like because, and you never actually get a why, and so you're just kind of stuck there being like,
I'm like,
right.
He is instructing people to do corporal punishment. And he also says that basically you should do follow-up type thing after the spanking and explain to them, I want you to understand that you are free to say anything you wish to me as always, even if your feelings are not very pleasant, but you will never be permitted to scream and call names and throw temper tantrums. If you behave in those childish ways, I will have to punish you as I would a little child. Is there anything you need to say to me now? If not, then put your arms around my neck because I love you.
Oh my god, this is literally the opposite of what aftercare is supposed to be.
Correct.
I'm just confused. From experience, I can tell you you can say anything part, not true.
Oh, correct. 100%.
What is that teaching the kid other than don't tell the parent you just did this thing?
All right.
We got spanked growing up. Ironically, mostly because we didn't sit still at church.
So, do you guys remember in Shiny Happy People when they showed the spanking demonstration?
Yeah,
this is that same kind of thing. Oh, me neither, because that's what I was raised with. But like everyone that I have talked to is like, what is wrong with these people? Now, granted, I'm not saying that I think it's a good thing. I'm not saying that I liked being reminded of that when I watched Shiny Happy People, but it didn't feel abnormal, right?
It didn't feel like this, I guess, gigantic problem. It was just like, just don't do that, is basically what it felt like, as opposed to like this systemic issue.
The issue was not so much the spanking. The issue was the way that it was contextualized with the, I'm only doing this because I love you, and this hurts me more than you, etc. Because
dude, I've told that directly.
That is literally same. I'm the one that is getting a lifelong anxiety disorder. Thank you.
People who claim to be literalists, that is just not true, and you fucking know it.
The thing is, they don't know it because they feel bad spanking you, so they think, oh, this is hurting me more.
Yeah, they need to be bent over the knee and whipped.
The thing is, I actually do think they would view that as less painful for them, because then there would be less emotional issues. I will say, having grown up, like, physical problems are actually easier to ignore than emotional ones.
Well, I think they need to be bent over the knee and spanked every day until it breaks their spirit.
I actually don't think. I feel like once you get to a certain point, you can just ignore that. I actually do think you can do that. Whereas children just can't do that because they have so little context.
People who have power, like they do.
I think that the only thing that would actually affect the parents is emotional pain. I say it definitely does hurt them.
Yeah. I present a different suggestion.
Just don't do it.
If your parents were awful and they were doing these sorts of abuse, may I recommend no contact. It is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful thing, because you could say, look, no, you got to do this when I was a kid. I even tolerated it for a while I was an adult, but I'm going to say no. I'm not going to do this anymore.
I want to recommend low contact.
Low contact is also an excellent suggestion if that works for you. You don't have to keep putting up with it. You do get to draw those boundaries for yourself as an adult. And I hope to God this next generation, as we all raise our kids, y'all raise your kids. I'm not having any. That is chapter 1 of A Strong Old Child. Because I don't want this to drag on and on and on and like to get too lost in the weeds, I'm going to try and get through a few chapters, like 3 or 4 chapters, and just give kind of like super broad highlights, maybe a couple of really poignant quotes from the book, etc. I am going to try and squeeze a bit more in so we're not... Because I wanted to really pick apart chapter 1, because I feel like that is a very apt intro to his psyche and to how he sees the parent-child relationship and child development.
What I think wouldn't be a terrible idea would be to make flowcharts.
Oh God, no.
Why not?
No.
I like flowcharts.
I like flowcharts too, but I like doing it with content I like.
Fair, but I feel like
I'll do
a
a flowchart for
like,
my D&D campaign.
I'm just saying is like when you're talking about like, condensing things into like an easy to read thing, I feel like flowchart works really well for that.
Flowchart is good. I'm also a big fan of bullet points.
I like the visual part of flowchart. Okay. This leads to this, leads to that. So what we all do is we all make our own flowchart, and then we have the battle of the flowcharts.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That'll be our final wrap up when we're done with the book. We'll have a battle of the flowcharts.
That's an idea.
Now y'all know you need to start taking notes.
Ah, fuck. What book is this?
To encapsulate the whole thing, James Dobson is an extremely well-respected evangelical leader that has been at the forefront of all things evangelical for the last damn near 50 years. Actually probably a little over 50 years now. But anyways, he is just so widespread, and he seems to be so innocuous because he's got that really nice, even counselor type voice from his radio show. Yeah. But he is just as insidious as the Pearls and as Bill Gothard. He is almost identical in the actual ideology and a lot of the
Prager vibes.
Oh, 100%. He has absolutely teamed up with PragerU before.
Oh,
he and Dennis are buddies. But it's just so sick how this man who sees children this way has put together decades worth of children's programming to try and help parents with indoctrination. So that way corporal punishment and everything else falls into place and the kids expect those things. And it is just this twisted, warped view of how to raise little humans. And it is truly sick and twisted because it denies the humanity of these children. It is all about this little devil in disguise that you've got to beat the evil out of. And I just it's so weird to get to be an adult and to watch your friends have kids, watch your cousins have kids, etc., and to see these wonderful little human beings. And you see some people, typically my friends, that are going the route of gentle parenting, which is not the same as permissive parenting, but they go about it with gentle parenting practices. And then I have other folks, largely family, that go with the authoritarian corporal punishment style. There are such better options. There's a better way to do this, I promise you. And they just will not hear it because, well, that's the world. And once again, I'm sorry, but the world is doing it better. They just objectively are. So
I will say it does seem like the trend is going away from corporal punishment, so that's kind of nice. But there is definitely a lot of holdouts.
Absolutely. The homeschooled evangelicals that are now homeschooling their own evangelical kids, that's the bastion of corporal punishment. The rest of the world is finding better ways to do it. We will come back next time with another installment of Mariology, which will hopefully be a little bit less triggering than our Dobson episodes.
I'm going to give you a spoiler.
Spoiler!
Here's a question. Why is the color Mary is dressed in blue in almost all images? Not all, but many. And the second question is, why is this connected to the story of Mary visiting Elizabeth?
Because
is it blue?
I'm going to go ahead and say it's because the English word for the color blue starts with B, and B also starts with boy, and Jesus is a boy. Which is why Mary should always wear
blue.
This
goes way before English stuff. It's tied to the incarnations, but it's also very visibly tied to her visiting Elizabeth, which is a very weird story, and I'll get into that.
So I'm going to guess it has to do with water, like water of the womb, because John leaped in Elizabeth's belly when she and Jesus came near.
You're thinking along lines that are that a Catholic who's thinking devotionally will think, but you're wrong.
I'm getting it though.
Like you're thinking like a Catholic who's thinking very devotionally will think, but it's not correct.
Okay, so don't tell us what it is. We're gonna let everybody ruminate.
We're gonna find out and be surprised. It's because of what I said.
It's not there. It's not. That's not it. But I promise you, it's much weirder than you expect.
That's what I'm coming to appreciate about Catholicism. It's all right. A couple of general housekeeping announcements. Obviously, we love when you comment on the videos so we can continue the dialogue. Absolutely look for the Discord links on the channel page. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, etc., it will be in the episode notes. But join in on our Discord if you are exvangelical, homeschooled, etc. We do have our monthly meetups for the various sectors of people. We have added LGBTQ meetups and a book club that is currently going through Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Adults, which if you were raised by Dobson parents, highly recommend that book. But then, of course, share this to help us out with the algorithm. If you are listening on Spotify, please rate us and give us some feedback there. That will also really help to spread the word. And then, of course, you can follow us on our socials. That is all, again, on the show page on YouTube or in the episode notes. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming along with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.